Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. Thomas Lang dreamed of a peaceful retreat by Blackstone River, a place to nurture his creativity and build his photography studio. But his haven turned into a battleground when Karen Aldrich, the HOA president, launched a relentless campaign to take control. This is a story of resilience, justice, and triumph. My name is Thomas Lang, and I have always considered myself someone who sees beauty where others see only the mundane. As a professional photographer, I often seek out secluded places where nature reveals its true essence. When I first laid eyes on the house by Blackstone River, I knew immediately that I had found what I had been searching for. The sprawling property surrounded by dense trees and accompanied by the gentle murmur of flowing water seemed like the perfect backdrop for my work and a sanctuary for my soul. The house was sold to me by an elderly woman named Mrs. Harper. She wanted the new owner to care for the property as she had lovingly done for decades. Handing me the keys, she spoke with a sincerity that touched me deeply. "Take care of this place. It's special, and it deserves someone who understands that." I felt like I was accepting not just a deed, but a responsibility to preserve the peace and beauty of this haven. For a few brief weeks, I was filled with excitement as I began to settle in. The mornings were spent exploring the land, camera in hand, while the evenings were for sketching ideas for a future studio and gallery. The serenity of the place seemed to unlock a level of creativity I hadn't felt in years. I was convinced that I had found my slice of paradise, but paradise doesn't last forever. One sunny afternoon, as I was unloading some new equipment from my car, a woman approached me. She was dressed impeccably in a tailored blazer, carrying a clipboard and wearing a smile that somehow felt more like a warning than a greeting. "Welcome, Mr. Lang," she said, her tone polite but tinged with an air of authority. "I'm Karen Aldrich, president of the local homeowners association. We're always pleased to see new faces in the community." I thanked her, assuming this was a friendly neighbor introducing herself, but her next words caught me off guard. "Of course, as part of our HOA, your property is subject to certain guidelines and standards. I'm sure you'll find them reasonable." I paused, confused. "I'm sorry, but my property isn't part of the HOA," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "It's private land, outside of your jurisdiction. My deed clearly states that." Karen's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened slightly. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "I'll make sure to send you a copy of our guidelines so you can review them at your convenience. It's always best to be on the same page." With that, she handed me a card with her contact information and left as abruptly as she had appeared. I stood there for a moment, holding the card, a sense of unease creeping in. My documents were clear, my property was legally independent, and yet Karen's demeanor suggested she was not someone who would take no for an answer. That night, as I reviewed my paperwork for the third time, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more complicated. My peaceful retreat was starting to feel like a battleground, and I had no idea what lay ahead. At first, I dismissed Karen Aldrich's visit as a minor annoyance. I had the paperwork to prove that my property was not part of the HOA, and I assumed that once she saw the evidence, she would drop the matter. I couldn't have been more wrong. A few days after our initial meeting, I received a letter from the HOA, officially welcoming me to the community and outlining a list of rules and fees I was expected to adhere to. The letter was polite, almost friendly, but it felt like a thinly veiled threat. Enclosed was an invoice for a year's worth of HOA dues, along with a reminder about penalties for late payments. I wrote back immediately, including copies of my deed and a letter from my lawyer confirming my property's independence. I thought that would settle it. It didn't. Karen escalated her efforts. Within a week, I started noticing subtle yet deliberate interference with my property. My mailbox was filled with letters warning of violations. The color of my house, the placement of my trash bins, even the length of my grass, all things that weren't governed by any agreement I had signed. She sent HOA representatives to inspect my land, uninvited, claiming they were there to ensure compliance with community standards. When I confronted them, they left without explanation, but not before jotting down notes and taking pictures of my property. Then came the utilities. One morning, I woke up to find that my electricity had been shut off. I called the utility company, only to be told that the HOA had requested the disconnection due to unpaid fees. My frustration turned to anger as I realized the lengths Karen was willing to go. It took hours to restore power, and the company required additional proof that my property wasn't under HOA control before they would waive the reconnection fee. Things quickly got worse. Packages I had ordered for my photography business started disappearing from my porch. Contractors I had hired to renovate parts of the house began receiving anonymous calls warning them to stay away from my property. One even canceled our agreement, citing concerns about his business reputation. I found tire tracks near my back fence, as if someone had been driving through my yard at night. When I reviewed footage from the security cameras I had installed, I saw shadows moving in the darkness. Someone was trespassing, but they always managed to stay just out of clear view. Karen's campaign wasn't just about intimidation. She weaponized the community against me, holding HOA meetings where my name was a constant topic of discussion. I was painted as a troublemaker and an environmental hazard, accusations that spread like wildfire among my neighbors. People I had barely met started giving me cold stares, and some even shouted comments when I walked down the street. The sense of isolation was suffocating. By this point, I realized I was dealing with more than just a misguided administrator. Karen was orchestrating a full-scale campaign to drive me out, using every resource at her disposal. It wasn't about rules or fees anymore. This was about control, and she was determined to win. But I wasn't about to give up my home without a fight. By the time I discovered the graffiti on my house, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Karen Aldrich had crossed every line, and it was clear she wouldn't stop until she either drove me out or completely dominated my property. I decided it was time to fight back, not just for myself, but to expose the corruption and abuse of power fueling the HOA. My first move was to gather evidence. I installed additional cameras around my property, covering every angle, and began documenting every interaction, every letter, and every incident of harassment. When I caught one of Karen's so-called investigators trespassing on my land to snap photos, I confronted him with a recording device in hand. The confrontation was brief, but it revealed enough to prove the HOA's overreach. Armed with this, I reached out to a lawyer specializing in property disputes and HOA abuses. The legal process was grueling. Karen's team tried to stonewall at every turn, but I had built an airtight case. My lawyer filed an official lawsuit against the HOA, accusing them of harassment, trespassing, and defamation. The lawsuit demanded compensation for damages and a cease and desist order to stop their interference with my property. But I didn't stop there. I turned to the court of public opinion. I contacted local journalists and shared my story, providing them with footage and documents that highlighted the HOA's abuses. Within weeks, my story hit the local news, and Karen's carefully curated image as a responsible leader began to crumble. Neighbors who had once avoided me started coming forward with their own stories of HOA overreach, and soon, a pattern of corruption and intimidation emerged. The breaking point came during a heated HOA meeting where Karen attempted to rally her remaining supporters. I attended with my lawyer and a local reporter, armed with a projector and a slideshow of evidence. As the images of trespassers, vandalism, and Karen's threatening letters filled the room, the mood shifted dramatically. People who had once trusted Karen began questioning her leadership, and some even accused her outright of using the HOA for personal vendettas. But the final blow came from the private investigator I had hired. He uncovered financial irregularities in the HOA's accounts, showing that Karen had funneled association funds for personal use, lavish vacations, high-end purchases, and payments to contractors for unspecified services. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community and left Karen visibly shaken. She attempted to deflect blame, but the evidence was overwhelming. The day of the court session was both nervous and soothing. My lawyer outlined the case in detail, detailing Karen's harassment and abuse of power. Witnesses, including former HOA members, testified against her, and the judge listened attentively as the mountain of evidence grew. When the verdict was finally handed down, it was a decisive victory. Karen was found guilty of numerous violations and ordered to pay substantial damages, as well as a prison sentence for repeated violations of the law. The HOA was ordered to carry out a complete restructuring, and Karen was permanently banned from holding any senior positions in the society. That day, when I left the courtroom, I felt a great sense of relief. The struggle was long and exhausting, but justice prevailed. Karen's reign of terror was over, and I was finally able to focus on rebuilding my life and property without fear of outside interference. The court's decision not only ended Karen Aldrich's dominance, but also marked a new beginning for the community and for me. The judge's decision was swift and uncompromising. Karen was ordered to pay me significant damages for harassment, defamation, and destruction of property. She was also fined for financial irregularities revealed during the investigation, and she was also imprisoned for financial fraud and official corruption. The HOA itself was taken under control, and a court-appointed administrator was tasked with overseeing its reform. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace returning to my life. The graffiti was scrubbed away, my utilities were restored, and the contractors who had abandoned the project began reaching out, offering to resume their work. My property, once a symbol of Karen's vendetta, became a beacon of resilience. I focused on repairing the damage and finalizing my plans to create a photography studio and gallery. Each step forward felt like reclaiming a part of my dream that had been stolen. Karen's fall from grace was swift and unforgiving. As the news of the court's decision spread, she became a pariah in the community she once controlled. Her allies, now fully aware of the consequences of their complicity, distanced themselves from her. Former supporters turned against her, demanding answers and accountability for the chaos she had caused. Within weeks, Karen's house went up for sale. Meanwhile, the HOA underwent a complete transformation. The court-appointed administrator prioritized transparency and fairness, introducing new measures to ensure no single individual could wield unchecked power again. Community meetings became open forums where residents could voice their opinions without fear of retaliation. Financial records were published monthly, and a new election was scheduled to choose a leadership team committed to the betterment of the neighborhood. For the first time, the HOA felt like it was truly serving the community rather than ruling over it. As for me, the resolution wasn't just about winning a legal battle. It was about regaining control of my life and proving that standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful they seem, is always worth it. My studio finally opened, and the space became more than just a place of work. It was a symbol of perseverance. Clients marveled not only at the beauty of the location, but also at the story behind it. My once quiet property now buzzed with life, filled with the sounds of creativity and collaboration. The community also began to heal. Neighbors who had once sided with Karen approached me with apologies, acknowledging the role they had played in enabling her behavior. Though I had every reason to hold a grudge, I chose to focus on moving forward. Together, we organized a neighborhood event, a celebration of unity and renewal held on my property. It was a symbolic gesture, a way to turn the page on a dark chapter and look toward a brighter future. Standing on the deck of my completed home, I looked out over the river and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The battle with Karen and the HOA had been brutal, but it had also brought out a strength in me I didn't know I had. It reminded me of the importance of standing firm in the face of injustice and the power of a community united for a common cause. My dream had not only survived, it had thrived, and I knew this was only the beginning of something truly meaningful. As I walk through my property now, camera in hand, I'm reminded of how far we've come. The scars of the past are still visible in some ways, but they've become part of the landscape, a testament to the strength it took to overcome adversity. This land is more than just a place where I live and work. It's a symbol of what can be achieved when determination meets justice. The consequences of this journey are still unfolding, but one thing is certain: I wouldn't change a thing. As I sit on the deck of my completed home, overlooking the river that first drew me to this property, I am struck by how much has changed. What began as a quiet retreat for creativity turned into a fierce battle for justice, and now it stands as a symbol of perseverance and triumph. The journey to this moment was far from easy, but it taught me lessons I will carry for the rest of my life. The fight against Karen Aldrich and the HOA was about more than just property rights. It was about standing up to those who misuse power, about refusing to be silenced, and about creating a legacy of fairness and accountability. Through the struggle, I learned the true value of resilience and the strength that comes from standing firm, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Reflecting on the community today, I see a place transformed. Neighbors who once viewed each other with suspicion now come together in trust and cooperation. The HOA, once a source of intimidation, has become a model of transparency and inclusivity. Monthly meetings are lively and productive, filled with genuine discussions about how to make our neighborhood better for everyone. These changes didn't happen overnight, but they are proof that progress is possible when people unite for a common cause. On a personal level, this experience has reshaped how I see myself and my work. My photography studio, now thriving, is more than just a business. It's a space where people come to connect, to celebrate milestones, and to create memories. Clients often ask about the story behind the property, and I share it with pride, hoping it inspires them to stand up for their own values when the time comes. Beyond the studio, I've found new ways to contribute. Advocacy has become an unexpected but fulfilling part of my life. Sharing my story at events and through articles has allowed me to connect with others facing similar challenges. Together, we are building a network of individuals committed to justice and fairness in their communities. It's a path I never imagined for myself, but one I now embrace wholeheartedly. As for the land itself, it has become a place of renewal and reflection. The river continues to flow, steady and unyielding, a reminder of the natural rhythms that persist regardless of human conflict. Walking along its banks, I find a sense of peace that no challenge can take away. This property, once under threat, now thrives as a haven for creativity, collaboration, and connection. The scars of the past remain, etched into the foundation of this home and the memories of those who witnessed the struggle. But those scars are not marks of defeat. They are badges of honor, reminders of what it took to reclaim this dream. They tell a story of resilience, of a man who refused to give up, and of a community that found its strength in unity. Looking ahead, I feel a profound sense of purpose. This chapter of my life may be closing, but its lessons will guide me in every new endeavor. The challenges we face often seem overwhelming, but this experience has shown me that even the most daunting obstacles can be overcome with determination, support, and a clear vision of what's right. As the sun sets over the water, casting a golden glow across the landscape, I know that this place will always be more than just a home. It is a testament to the power of persistence, the importance of community, and the belief that justice can prevail, even in the face of overwhelming odds. For that, I am endlessly grateful.